Everybody is seeing my screen of laptop. Everybody is seeing. प्रत्येकाला स्लाइड दिसतायत का?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let us start a revision of third chapter once again, because in fourth chapter is depends on third chapter. So in fourth chapter there is object modeling technique. Before that we have studied what is object model, what is a dynamic model, and what is a functional model, and what is the relationship between a dynamic model, functional model, and object model. So third chapter is regarding with a dynamic model. First two chapters. First chapter is regarding with the introduction of object-oriented modeling technology. Second chapter related with object model. Third chapter related with dynamic model. Fourth chapter related with functional model. That is object modeling techniques. So in this chapter, in dynamic model, we will study what is a state, a transition, event, action, a state machine models, concurrency, entry and exit action, and relationship between object, functional and dynamic models, and data flow diagrams. So time management, the time dependent aspect of a system is concerned with important changes in the state of its system. Essence of this dynamic model is a transition, event, action, and state machine. In model, then what is the state? The state in which the situation at a particular condition during the lifetime of the object. Then transition, the change in the states from one state to another state, that is the transition. Then event, then occurrence occurs during that transition. Then what is the action? Action is uninterrupted and automatic computation that occurs due to some event and concurrency of transitions. A state machine model is a behavior of an object. It passes through the number of states in its lifetimes due to some events as well as the actions occurring due to the events. A state machine is usually represented through the state transition diagrams. So, event classes and attitudes. Event classes examples like airplane departments. It has the parts such as airline, flight numbers, city from which to which city, and so event. This is event class for airplane department. What is the event? The event is United, that is airline, then flight number 23, and city departs from the Rome. Similarly, in case of mouse button pushed, that is button located. So right button is pushed. That button, that is the attribute. This mouse button pushed. Direction is at 2930 degree. Then phone receiver is left same as, then dial digit, its attribute is a digit, any digit from 0 to 9. So dial the digit, for example here we have taken a 2. So then in case of a phone call scenario, whenever we want to call to somebody, then the caller side leaves the receiver. Whenever he leaves or he or she leaves a receiver, then a dialing tone starts. Whenever some digit is dialed, then dialing tone is end. Then dial that particular phone number, then called phone begins a ringing if it is online. Then a ringing tone appears in calling phone. The called party answers. The called phone stops ringing. A ringing tone disappears in calling phone, and then phones are connected. The called party hangs up whenever the communication is done. Then phones are disconnected and
हॅलो
caller hangs up.
हॅलो
Yes.
सर तुमची स्क्रीन
हा
दिसत
यस.
नाहीये.
दिसत नाहीये.
हा नाहीये दिसत.
एक मिनिट हा.
हा हा
आता दिसते का?
नाही सर.
2 मिनिट. पाणी दे की बाळा. हॅलो.
सर.
हॅलो.
येस सर.
स्क्रीन दिसते आता?
नाही सर दिसत नाहीये. हा आता
काय
दिसते सर.
दिसत नाही दिसायला?
आता दिसते सर. आता दिसते.
बर ठीक आहे.
हा दिसते आता.
So event trace diagram. Each event transmits the information from one object to another object. In example of phone calling, dial tone begins. Event transmit a signal from the phone line to the caller. This is the example of transmit information from one object to another object. Then event trace identify sender and receiver of object for each event. That is diagram is known as event trace diagram, which shows the sequence of events this. Then event trace shows objects as vertical lines and each event horizontal lines sender to receiver. This is event diagram of phone call. These are object phone line callee. These are object whereas the horizontal lines are the events. In case of phone line, the caller side receives leaves the receiver. So these events from caller to phone line. Okay, then dialing tone begins. These events from phone line to caller, and whenever some digit dials, that is dialing digit, this events from caller to phone line. Then it gives a dialing tone ends. This is the event. Then dial that particular phone number. Okay. After some time, the phone line gives the acknowledgement or events to the caller in the form of a ringing tone, as well as the event phone rings to the callee side. So whenever callee side receivers its lifts its receiver, then that is for answering the phone line. That is, this events answers the phone line is events from callee to phone line, and then tone stops. Tone stops. That is phone line to caller event. Then when callee stops, this is from phone line to callee side. Connect same from phone line to caller and phone line to callee. Whenever communication ends at the callee side, callee hangs up so that connection broken. So these events from phone line to caller and phone line to callee. This event diagram for phone line. The question may be asked for 8 marks. Draw event sequence diagram for phone line and explain it. Then next concept is state. State is an abstraction of values and links to an object. The set of values and links are grouped together into state according to the gross behavior of objects. The state of bank or any element. The state of a element. In case of bank, we will take element. The state of element is either solvent or insolvent, depending on whether its excess exceed is liabilities. So states from corresponding to verbs. In case of grammar also, verbs suffixing ing, that is from wait, it will become as a waiting, dial, it will become as a dialing. So other duration of some condition, power, powered, freezing, below freezing. These are the conditions. That is the its states. So suppose I want to wake up at a 5 o'clock. So I will set alarm at the my decided time, and decided time is known as a target time. When my in the clock target time is equal to current time, at that time alarm will be on. So what is the state? First state is alarm ringing. Whenever first the discrete ringing, alarm on in watch is ringing to indicate the target time. What events occur at that time? The event of sequence occur set alarm at target time in sequence, including clear alarm when current time is equal to target time. And then what is the condition? Alarm will ringing up to suppose nearly about 20 seconds. Then alarm, what is the condition on alarm set to the target time, and target time is less than equal to current time is less than equal to target time plus 20 seconds, and no button has been pushed since the time is the condition. So this state diagram we can draw in case of uh, alarm ringing or alarm time. Then what is a transition and the condition? Transition is an instantaneous change from one state to another state. A transition occurs when its event occurs unless an optional guard condition causes the event to be ignored. A guard condition is Boolean expression that must be true in order for transition to occur. The choice of next state depends on the both source state and the event received. Then a state diagram is a graph whose nodes are states and whose directed arcs are transition between states. A state diagram specifies or describes a state sequence caused by event sequences. State name must be unique within the scope of state diagram only. All the objects in the class execute state diagram for that class. The class state diagram models the common behavior of the class object. So this is a state diagram. Pre-diagram is state time diagram, and this is a diagram in case this is in case of phone line. Initially, phone is in ideal state. Whenever leaves the receiver, then dial tone begins. This is off hook. Off hook means received letter from the hook, and dial tone begins, and it will stop whenever any number or any digit is not dialed, and receiver leaves receiver leave receiver towards the hook, and so that it can become ideal. Or suppose you have let the receiver begins, but you have not dialed a digit. After some time, a timeout and give its warning and then timeout, so that it we can we can put the receiver on, or so that it can become an ideal. Then suppose we have dialed some numbers, then we receive the voice of dialing tone, dialing digits, so that after dialing, suppose the dialed number is invalid, then you will get the event as invalid, and you will get the recorded message, the dialed number is invalid. So that, and after some time it goes to the ideal state. Or suppose your number is dialed as accurate, after ringing it will also goes to the ideal state. Suppose the number is valid, then go to the connections. Sometimes the callee person is busy on another call, then we'll get the message number is busy and get busy tone. Otherwise we get a trunk busy or fast busy tone. Or otherwise there is a ringing, but no one can receiving that call, so that the phone goes in ideal state. Whenever your number is connected, then it goes to the ringing, and call side receive the receiver, and number is connected, and communication has to be done. Then after connection, phone goes to the disconnection, so that the phone becomes in ideal state. This is state diagram, and previous is state transition diagram. These are the different states: ideal, dial tone, dialing, cutting, ringing, connected, disconnected, requested, warning, timeout, busy tone. These are the states, and these states are denoted by this elliptical symbol. And in state transition diagrams, there are three objects: callee, caller, and phone call. And every horizontal line denotes as a event. Okay, this is the difference between state diagram and state transition diagram. Then a concept is nested state diagram. So every state diagram may be or may not be nested. The state diagram with the diagram is known as a nested state diagram. This is an example of this figure for vending machine with more than one selectable item. Suppose nested diagram in case of ATM. Initially, ATM is suppose vending machine. Instead of this, we will consider uh, nested state diagram regarding the ATM. So initially, the ATM machine is in ideal state. Whenever we insert the card, whenever we insert the card, then it will ask for the password. If card is valid, if you have entered a valid password, then it will ask for the amount withdrawal, amount of banking statement or amount withdrawal, or um, changing password, or any other options. So that we can select one. The same concept is used here in the nested state diagram of vending machine. So initially the vending machine is ideal, then set the balance, then for collecting money in case of coins or in case of notes. To add balance, suppose do test atom and compute the changes. Suppose there are some initially amounts and you want to deposit some amount, then there will be increment in mm, saving balance. But suppose you want to withdraw that amount, then there will be decrement the saving balance. So there is compute the change, where is increment or decrement. There are different phases the make change, or sometimes we went to the ATM machine for checking the balance. So after some time it will go through the ideal state. This is a nested state diagram for a vending machine. Then a nested state diagram which allows a sub diagram to hide complexity or refactor a task. Consider a vending machine with 10 different selections. The act of dispensing an item can be refactored as a single state, even though it may require several substates to compute its task. Then there are two parts: activity and action. So an activity is behavior that can be executed in response to an event. Activity can be performed upon a transition, upon the entry to or exit from a state, or upon the same event within a state. So this is the ideal state in case of pop-up menu in vending machines. So, and this is the menu visible. These are the two states. This is in case of mouse button. Initially mouse is in ideal state. Whenever I press a right button down or display pop-up menu is visible. Whenever I press the right button, then it will display the menu. And right button up, then it says that it go to the ideal state. Then advanced dynamic modeling concepts as entry and exit actions. Yesterday we have a day before yesterday we have seen the action closed, opening, open and closings. These are the actions. Initially the machine is closed or motor is closed. In case of door, we will take example of a door of home. Initially door is closed. Whenever I want open the door, then a press button so that the action goes to the from closed to opening. And this is the opening state, and this opening state will happen till the open door completely, so that from opening state goes to the open and door is opened. Whenever I press a button from open, it will go to the closing state, from open to closing state, and up closing state to the closed door closed. Sometimes whenever door is in closing state and we can press a button, we will press the button so that from closing state to it will go to the directly opening state, so that door can be open. This is entry and exit actions. The entry action is the action that is executed on entering the state, irrespective of transition that led to it. Likewise, the action that is executed while the living state, irrespective of the transition that led out of it, and is cancelled an exit action. So, in previous diagram, we have seen the closed or shut down, and the menu is visible. This is event state. This is event state, and this is the self transition, cursor moving or highlight menu item. This is the menu visible. This is a self transition, and this is event with some state. So next concept is operations. Operation, the state diagram presented so far describe the patterns of events and the states for a single object class. Then there is a controlling operation. The state diagrams would be of little use of they just describe the patterns of the events. A behavioral description of an object must specify what the object does in response to events. Operations attached to the state or transitions are performed in response to the corresponding state or events. So controlling operation, that is the activity. Activity is an operation that takes time. An activity is an operation that takes time to complete. An activity is associated with state. Activities include continuous operations such as displaying a picture on television screen, as well as sequential operations that terminated by them after the some interval of time, such as closing a value or performing a computation. A state may control a continuous activities such as a ringing a telephone bell that persists until the event terminates it by causing a transition from the state. So, in controlling operation, the word starts from a do a within a state box indicates that Activity A starts on entry to the state and stops on exit. A means activity. Suppose activity is opening, closing, pressing. So do this activity. So activity starts on entry to the state and stops the exit. A state may also control a sequential activity such as a robot moving a part which progresses until the completes or until the interrupted by an event that terminates it prematurely. The same notation do A indicates that the sequential activity begins on entry to the states and stops when completes. So if an event causes a transition from the state before the activity completes, then the activity is terminated prematurely. For example, a robot might encounter resistance, causing it to cease moving. The two uses are not really different. A continuous activity may be viewed as a sequential activity that lasts indefinitely. So then another operation is action. Up till now we have studied what is activity, what is state transition diagram, what is state diagram. Then next concept is action. Action is an instantaneous operation. An action is associated with an event. An action represents an operation whose duration is insignificant compared to the resolution of the state diagram. A real world operation is not really instantaneous, of course, but modeling is a modeling it as an action indicates that we do not care about its internal structure for control purposes. If we do care, then an operation should be modeled as an activity with a starting event, ending event, and possibly some intermediate events. Then in activity, there is a slash notation which indicates the description of operation. So this is action of pop-up menu we have described in case of mouse button pressing. Then whenever this is a notation, this is a slash button. Slash indicates the action, which action to be done. Suppose here do activity first. So activity first is event one. Then this event have some attributes with some condition and the action regarded to this event so that the object can be converted from state 1 to state 2. This is the structured state diagram. Then nested state diagram we have seen. Then it have four parts: problem with flat state diagrams, then nested state diagrams, then state generalization, then event generalization. So this is a problem with flat state diagram. So whenever object there are n independent boolean attributes that affect the control, and representing such object with single flat state diagram which require 2 raised to n slates. So by partitioning the slates into states into n independent state machine, however only 2 n states are required. Or consider the state diagram in which n square transitions are needed to connect every state to every other state. Suppose there are 5 objects or 5 states. So for communication to each other, there are only 2n. Here n is equal to 5. So 5 into 2, that is a 10 communication ways, so that each state communicate to each and every state. Then nested state diagram is explained. This is nested state diagram in case of vendor machine. Then state generalization. A nested state diagram is actually a form of generalization states. A generalization is or relationship an object in state in the high level diagram must be exactly one state in the nested diagram. It must be in the first state or second state or in one of the other state. The states in the nested state diagram are all refinements of the states in the high level diagram. Then this is in case of the transmission. In case of the car, this is the state diagram. In case of the gears, initially gears are neutral. Whenever we want to push forward, then go to the forward directions gears, first gear, then second gear, then third gear. Whenever we want to take car in reverse direction, then from third gear to we will went we will go from third gear to second gear, from second gear to first gear, so that car becomes neutral and we will push the reverse gear. After reversing the car, then go to the neutral and then go to the first gear, so that the car goes to the forward direction. This is a state generalization in case of the car. Then event generalization. Event can be organized into a generalization hierarchy with inheritance of event attributes. Event of mouse button down keyboard characters are two kinds of input. For both events, inherit the attributes time from the event and attribute device from the event user input. So inherited event attributes as shown in the second part of each box. This is the event with respect to the time. This is a generalized for from input event, and there are two types of devices. First is mouse and second is keyboard. Mouse button, that is the location, left button or right button or upward or downward. These are the events. In case of keyboards, there are some control keywords, some graphics keywords. In graphics keywords, there is a space keyboard, space, alphanumeric or punctuation keys. This is the event diagram in case of the mouse and keyboard as input to the machine. Then yesterday, day before yesterday, we have seen the concurrency. There are two types of concurrencies: aggregation concurrency and concurrency with an object. So aggregation concurrency and object model describes a set of concurrent objects, each with its own state and state diagram. The objects in a system are inherently concurrent and can change the state independently. The state of the entire system cannot be represented by single state in a single object. It is a product of all states of all objects in it. In many systems, number of objects can change dynamically. So a state diagram is assembly of collection of state diagram from each one for each component. Aggregation implies the concurrency, and here aggregation is and relationship and generalization is or relationship. The aggregate state is one state first diagram, state from the second diagram and state from the another diagram. This is all states are combined together, and so that the aggregation or activity can be done. In more interesting cases, the component states interact. So this is yes, day before yesterday we have seen the car examples, moving of car. For motion of the car, first ignition, then transmission in reverse or forward direction, then brakes and then accelerators. So we have seen triggers. Then second is concurrency with object. Concurrency within the state of single object arises when the object can be partitioned into subsets of attributes or links, each of which has its own subdiagrams. The state of object comprises one state from each subdiagram. The subdiagrams need not be independent. The same event can cause transition in more than one subdiagram. Concurrence within single causal state of an object is shown by partitioning the complete subdiagram into lines. The names of overall composite state can be rewritten as separated by dotted lines from the concurrent states. These dotted lines, there is a difference between two objects. Here example is playing rubber in north south wind rubber and east west wind rubber. So the next advanced dynamic modeling concepts. In this we will see the concept entry and exit actions, internal actions, atomic transitions, sending events, synchronization of concurrent activities. So entry and exit action as an alternative showing actions can be associated with entering and exiting state. There is no difference in expressive power between two notation, but frequently all transitions into the state perform the same action in which the attaching the action state more comprises attaching the action to the state is more conscious. For example, in case of door opening and closing, we have seen the user generate a depress the events with the push button. The door should be open or closed. So each event reverses the direction of the door, but for safety, door must open fully before it can be closed. The control generates motor up, motor down, that is door opened, door closed actions for the motor or door. The motor generates a door open and door close events when the motion is completed. Both transitions, entering state, opening causes the door to open. Then internal actions. An event can cause an action to be performed without causing a state. An event name is written inside the box followed by a slash. The here example is state 1. Then event return, event do activity 1, and event is entry followed by a slash, and name of the action is action 2. Then event is exit, here slash action 3, then event slash action 4. These are the internal actions of the states. So therefore there is no difference in an internal action and self transition. The self transition causes the exit and entry actions to the state to be executed. Then automatic transition. Frequently only the purpose of state to be perform a sequential activity. When the activity is completed with the source state fires. An arrow without an event name indicates automatic transition that fires when activities associated with the source is completed. If there is no activity, the labeled transition fires as soon as the state is entered. If the state has one or more automatic transition but none of the guard conditions are satisfied, then the transition remains until one of the condition is satisfied or until an event causes another transition to fire. The change in the value of the condition is an implicit event. For example, the temperature is below freezing. It is a condition, and the temperature goes below freezing. It is an event triggered or event associated with that condition. This is automatic transition. Then sending events. An object can perform the actions of sending an event to another object. A system of objects interacts by exchanging events. The action send E for event. Send event sends event E with the given attribute to the objects or objects that receive it. For example, the phone line sends the connect, that is the phone number, to event switcher. When the complete phone number has been dialed, the event can be directed as a set of object as a single object. Any and all objects with the transitions of the event can accept it is concurrently. The word send can be omitted if it is clear that E is the name of event. In our diagram, event names is shown in italics and one action name. In normal state, there is no confusion. And the last part, synchronization of concurrent activities. Sometimes when an object must perform two or more activities concurrently, the internal steps of activity are not synchronized, but both activities must be completed before the object can progress its next state. For example, consider the ATM machine, that is cash dispensing machine, that dispenses the cash and returns the user's card at the end of the transaction. Sometimes we first collect the cash and then collect the card, or sometimes we first collect the card and then collect the cash, or sometimes both cash and card collects simultaneously. Here order is irrelevant, only the fact that only both of them has been taken, and this is so that the machine can reset its, or so the machine can go in its ideal state. This is example of synchronization of concurrent activity, or this is in case of, I just explained. The example dynamic model next again, replace object and dynamic model. Dynamic model specifies the allowable sequence of changes to the objects from the object model. The state diagram describes all or part of behavior of one object for a given class. States are equivalence classes of attributes and links values the objects. Events can be represented as operations on the object model. Then a relation of object and dynamic models. So dynamic model structure is related to and constrained by the object model structure. A substate refines the attributes and link values that object can have, but it refinement object values exactly generalization by the restrictions. The hierarchy of states of an object is equivalent to the restriction of hierarchy of object class. Object-oriented models and languages do not usually support the restrictions in the generalization hierarchy. So the dynamic model is the proper place to represent both generalization of classes and generalization of state partitions, the state set of possible object values. A single object can have different states over time. The object preserves its identity, but it cannot have different classes. Inherent differences among the object and therefore properly modeled as a different classes, while temporarily differences are properly modeled as different states from the same class. Then a data flow diagram we have studied deeply. It have four parts: process, data flows, actors, and data stores. Then another two parts as constraints and control flows we have deeply studied. Then last part from this chapter, relations of functional to object and dynamic models. So functional model shows what has to be done by system. The leaf processes are the operations on the object. The object model shows the achiever of the objects and each process is implemented by the method on some object. The dynamic model shows the sequence in which the operations are performed and each sequence is implemented as a sequence, loop or alternation of statements with some method. The three models come together in the implementation methods and the functional model is a guide to the method. So relative to functional model, the object model shows the structure of actors, data stores and flows. So functional models regarding with the data flow diagrams. The dynamic model shows the sequence in the process that are performed. Relative to the object model, the functional model shows the operations on the classes, the arguments of each operation. Therefore, it shows the supplier-client relationship among the classes. The dynamic model shows the states of the each objects and each operations that performed as the receiver events and changes the state. The relative to the dynamic model, the functional model shows the definitions of leave actions, activities that are undefined with the dynamic model. The object model shows the what changes state and undergoes the operation. This is the overview of the chapter third.